This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
All right, Fact Check This daily. And if you haven't been paying attention to the news, there's been some interesting rumors that have started swirling around. And today we're going to talk about and take those on. So give me just a second. Let me get this pulled up. Initially, I saw it on Morning Spud on leading what was it called? Leading Report or something like that. Leading Report, and then again on Unusual Whales. I've also seen it discussed on a number of different accounts on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Breaking: the Biden administration is considering pardoning Anthony Fauci and Liz Cheney per Politico. They're also considering pardons for Adam Schiff as well, according to Leading Report. And the full docket here, Schiff, Cheney, and Fauci are the ones that I've seen talked about the most. Be degree of legitimacy to at least the consideration of the pardon, because literally within maybe a couple hours of all of these reports being made and the rumor mill kind of starting to churn with the preemptive. I mean, this is what's insane about this. The preemptive pardons. I was able to find this article. I was looking up preemptive pardons in the past. Like, that was what I was searching for. Like, preemptive pardons that past presidents had made. To see if there was like a precedent for that, if this was something that has been done regularly, where an outgoing president would pardon people for stuff that they weren't being charged with, pardon people for stuff that they weren't under investigation for, to see if there was any precedent for why this would be something that Joe Biden would do, or if there was even, if there was even a legal precedent for Joe Biden to do such a thing. And yes, but it's pretty flimsy. So we'll read through this article, and then we'll kind of talk about it a little bit more. So Joe Biden and the precedent of preemptive pardons. Now that President Joe Biden has used his clemency power to pardon his son, he can use it for another and more noble purpose, of course. They think it's a very noble purpose. To foil President-elect Trump's revenge-filled desire to punish his political opponents and prosecutors, whom he holds responsible for his legal troubles. This whole idea that Trump is going to go after political opponents is one of the most half-cocked, insane things that I think I've ever seen. Trump has never really been big on that sort of stuff. He's more of a let's try to all like peacefully get along kind of guy. And also, the Biden administration has literally spent the entirety of the last 4 years going after their political opponents without fail, without end, and for no good fucking reason in more cases than not, and using a corrupt justice system of insane leftist judges to push that stuff forward on charges that would never be brought forward against a regular human being on any case ever. But yeah, this is like a good thing to foil Trump from doing the thing that he's probably not going to do anyway. Oh, but here, Trump's plan is hardly a secret. He first announced it in March 2023 in an address to the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC. He told his CPAC audience, in 2016, I declared, I am your voice. Today, I add, I am your warrior. I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. So that's what the left thinks means Trump is going after his political opponents. What he actually meant by that was he's going to protect people who are not doing anything wrong and clean up the stuff for the J6 people who didn't do anything wrong. But Trump's hardly secret plan of going after his political opponents is he's going to be justice for those who have been wronged and betrayed. He's going to be retribution. These people are fucking insane. As the Washington Post, Aaron Baker wrote at the time, even for a former president known for casting situations in the most apocalyptic terms possible, and his enemies as being nefarious as possible. Enemies being as nefarious as possible. You are the people who called us literally Hitler, fascist, Nazis for the past 8-10 fucking years. Fuck you, motherfuckers. You know, I read this whole thing and I didn't think I would get heated on the second time read through, but here we go. It was a remarkable rhetorical flourish. It validates long-held suspicions that Trump's 2024 campaign amounts to something of a revenge tour. If that's what you took from that, maybe you should look inward. In October, NPR reported that after announcing his presidential bid, Trump issued more than 100 threats to investigate, prosecute, imprison, or otherwise punish his perceived opponents. Again, if that's what you took from that, maybe there's something wrong with you. Last week, Massachusetts Democrat Senator Edward J. Markey called on Biden to respond to those threats by issuing preemptive pardons to individuals President-elect Trump considers his political enemies. The president should heed Markey's advice. Doing so would not only be a service to the recipients of Biden's mercy, it would also protect the rule of law and forestall one of the president-elect's most dangerous plans. Protect the rule of law by preventing people who potentially have done nefarious things from being investigated. That's how you protect the rule of law, by preventing investigations to be carried out against people who may or may not have done something wrong. Yeah, that's how you protect the rule of law. Aren't you supposed to be in school? Why are you watching me? Anyway, make your friends watch me too. And it would drive Trump crazy. That's like Trump lives rent-free in these motherfuckers' heads. It's insane. The president's pardon of Hunter Biden was partly motivated by his justifiable fear of what Trump's Justice Department might do to his son. No, the Hunter Biden pardon was motivated by fear that they would give Hunter Biden a sweet plea deal in return for him ratting out his father and his father's corruption over the last 30 fucking years with everything he's been doing in Ukraine and everywhere else. His influence with China, his influence in Ukraine, that's what motivated it. Let's not get it twisted. But that worry is one that we should share, not just for Hunter, but for anyone who crosses the retribution-seeking president-elect. Indeed, Trump's very reason for running for president for a third time was to pay back a vast array of people and organizations whom he considers to be his political enemies and responsible for the legal troubles that vexed him after he left the White House. The Washington Post quotes someone privy to Trump's plan who says Trump wants to clean out the bad guys and people who went after me. Among those whom Trump considers bad guys is the person he defeated in November, Vice President Kamala Harris. In September, he told rally attendees in Erie, Pennsylvania, that she should be impeached and prosecuted. During the campaign, he said that specifically for her deliberate mismanagement of the border crisis. Like this idea that they're fucking insane. During the campaign, he also pledged to appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and the entire Biden crime family. That's already been knocked in the head because they gave the pardon to Hunter Biden, which prevents. That's like the one bargaining chip that they had, or the one like area of leverage that they had, was plea deal for Hunter to get him to talk about what all Joe's involvement was. It cannot be understated how much more the right understands the left than the left understands the right. The left is completely divorced from reality and from like the actual context of all of this stuff. They don't actually. I'm convinced that the left are actually illiterate by and large. I don't think they read anything. I don't think they listen to anything. I don't think they do any sort of research or homework or anything at all. If you just listen to the things Trump says in the full context of it, if you read articles in the full context, you get all of the information. But what the left does is they take a soundbite and then they turn the soundbite into a demonization, and they run with that forever and leave out all of the actual real information that was involved in everything that was said before and after said soundbite. I mean, that's the left. They're all about Like, what's the clip? What's the actual, like, what's the thing that's going to drive an emotional response, not what is the actual intellectual thing that's happening here. Let's see. In addition, NPR notes at various times during the 2024 campaign, the president-elect repeatedly targeted the prosecutors, judges, and even courtroom staff connected to the prosecutions against him for alleged election interference, improperly holding classified documents, and business fraud. Trump has already begun to implement his plans. Matt Gaetz, his first nominee to be Attorney General, was distinguished only by his loyalty to Trump and his devotion to the revenge and retribution scheme. When his nomination failed, Trump turned to a former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, who told Fox News last year, the Department of Justice, the prosecutors will be prosecuted, the bad ones, the investigators will be investigated. She will be aided by Kash Patel, whom Trump wants to install as FBI director. According to an article in Forbes, Patel has broadly vowed to retaliate against Trump's enemies during a second stint in the White House, not just in government, but in the media. Last month, Trump took another step to make good on his promised retribution when he sued CBS News over its 60 Minutes interview with Harris. He alleged that the interview was a partisan and unlawful act of election and voter interference. Not surprisingly, he filed his suit in Amarillo, Texas, so that it would be heard by U.S. District Judge Matthew Kamsky, another of Trump's most devoted allies. While there's nothing Biden can do about the frivolous suit against CBS, he can, as Senator Markey suggested, shield others on Trump's targeted list. Preemptive pardons of the kind Markey recommended are unusual but legal. The Brookings Institution notes pardons need not follow convictions, but can be issued before or during a criminal prosecution. The rationale for so-called preemptive pardons is that there is no point in requiring a person to live in fear of conviction or go through a trial. The most important precedent for the kind of preemptive pardons that Biden should grant was the pardon President Gerald Ford granted to his predecessor, Richard Nixon, after Nixon resigned in the wake of the Watergate scandal. Ford pardoned Nixon for all offenses against the United States, which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from July 20th, 1969 through August 9th, 1974. That was for Richard Nixon's term in office. That also, we talked about this on Monday with Hunter Biden's pardon. Like, the situation around that is much different. Also, there was like actually investigations going on. Anthony Fauci, Adam Schiff, Liz Cheney are not under investigation for anything. What are you preemptively pardoning them for? And if you are preemptively pardoning them, aren't you kind of admitting, yeah, they've been doing some shady illegal shit for the past whatever the length of the pardon, whatever the time frame of the pardon extends to? Like, what? Anyway. Other preemptive pardons include President Jimmy Carter's 1977 pardon of all Vietnam-era draft dodgers, and, okay, so that's very specific, and President George H.W. Bush's 1992 pardon of former Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger before Weinberger was brought to trial. Again, Weinberger was actually under investigation and had charges pending, and I don't remember the exact case of that, but if memory serves correct, when I was kind of browsing through some of this shit, it was pretty sketchy at best. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Trump himself issued a pardon to former Sheriff Joseph Arpaio after he was charged and convicted of criminal contempt of court, but before he had been sentenced. Again, this is a pardon of someone who is already been charged. This is not a preemptive, like, blanket pardon for God knows what. So, like, they're making all of these that wouldn't even really count as a preemptive pardon because he was awaiting sentencing. Trump's pardon specifically included any other offenses that might be charged. More than 150 years earlier, in 1866, the United States Supreme Court approved preemptive pardons in a case involving a former Confederate senator pardoned by President Andrew Johnson. It made clear that the pardon power extends to every offense known to the law and may be exercised at any time after its commission, either before legal proceedings are taken or during their presidency or after conviction and judgment. Again, this is a very... it's important to understand the circumstances of the situation. The senator and other senator. There wasn't just one that received that kind of a pardon from Johnson. It was a number of Confederate senators because they knew that the Northern lawmakers were going to try to go after people who had participated in secession, and they didn't want that to happen. They wanted to return to peaceful, like, we all need to come back together and get along. And going after people for seceding was not going to help with that. So, like, again, there are situations to understand and look at when we're talking about all of these preemptive pardons. They all had precedent. They all had standing. They all had, like, reasons that they were being done. This is exclusively because you think that these people might be Donald Trump's political opponents, after you just spent the last 4 years actively going after all of your own political opponents. Another vehicle that Biden could use to thwart Trump's nefarious plan is amnesty. Amnesty is essentially identical to pardon effect, but generated to a group or class of people rather than a specific individual. The power to grant amnesty was first used by President George Washington, who granted amnesty to participants in the Whiskey Rebellion. President Thomas Jefferson granted amnesty to any citizen convicted of a crime under the Alien and Sedition Act in 1871. The Supreme Court made clear that the president's pardon power includes amnesty. So whether by presumptive pardon or amnesty, there is no doubt that before he leaves office, Biden has the authority to protect some, if not all, of Trump's intended victims. While the list of people who should receive clemency is long, Biden should begin with former Special Prosecutor Jack Smith and dozens of attorneys, FBI agents, and support staff who worked with him. If Biden grants clemency to Smith and the others on Trump's enemies list, he would, as Gerald Ford said of the Nixon pardon, uphold the Constitution, do what is right, and do the very best for America. No doubt Trump, his MAGA allies, and the hosts of Fox News shows. This shows you how fucking ignorant these people are, that they lump the hosts of Fox News shows in with this whole thing. They would scream foul and allege that Biden's act was corrupt and criminal. In response, Biden could remind them that their allies on the Supreme Court granted immunity to all presidents, including Joe Biden. That would be the supreme irony indeed. I cannot believe how just straight up brain dead the people who write this shit are. Also, in the event that Trump pardons all of these people, or not Trump, that Biden pardons all of these people that are supposedly on Trump's political enemy list, or say he grants amnesty to everybody who's served, to every Democrat who's served in Congress since 2021, because I mean, that would be, if you're going to narrow it down to Trump's political opponents, all of this administration have been going after Trump for the last 4 years. So to grant a pardon or amnesty to all of these people who are not under investigation for anything. That's the thing. All of the precedent that was set before were people who were under investigation, had charges, awaiting conviction, awaiting sentencing, or extenuating circumstances like Civil War, Whiskey Rebellion, like big world-changing events that had happened. This is the transfer of power. Kamala Harris lost. Donald Trump won. And now you're going to grant blanket immunity to every Democrat who has served in the administration? If this happens, if Joe Biden carries through with this and grants preemptive pardons to all of these people, grants amnesty to a whole bunch of Democrats, that should be proof that this whole thing needs to be torn down to the fucking studs and not even rebuilt. Like, just leave the bones there for everybody to see what was supposedly our justice system, because this is not justice. That would be proof that it is a us and them. Rules for thee, but not for me. They can do anything and everything they want, and as long as the right president is in control, whenever he leaves office, he can just grant them blanket immunity for everything that they've ever done. You can run wild and do whatever the fuck you want. That is not what the Supreme Court ruling on granted immunity to all presidents meant, contrary to what these fucking retards on the left think, these supposed journalists. That is not what that said. And this would be a miscarriage of justice. This would be the indisputable proof that it is time to end this fucking failed experiment that we call democracy once and for all. That's it for today. I will be back tomorrow. I was actually going to do one. What I was going to do today was talk about the shots and the current very low rates of getting those that's going on in the U.S. But this whole thing came up and it seemed a lot more important. So we'll talk about the clot shots tomorrow instead. Thank you for joining me. These dailies are supposed to be like 7 to 10 minutes, and I keep running 20 on them. Hopefully that doesn't bother you. But this stuff is important, and there's a lot to it, and I want to cover it thoroughly. So anyway, hope you're enjoying the content. I'm going to keep doing this because I'm having a lot of fun with it too, and I've actually got a massive list of stuff that I want to talk about over the next couple weeks. So hope you're here for it. Hope you're having fun. I most certainly am, and I will catch you tomorrow. Later.